So realistically, it doesn't really change anything for me from my job.
Now, we were talking last time we spoke. I had just completed my R12, my annual recurrent training at the Death Star, as we like to call it here. And you had mentioned that you were proud of me because I didn't overwhelm myself by studying for months on end.
Yes.
This time, first time, I just kind of was like, you know what, I got this. And
I always laughed inwardly at you, and it's like, oh well, I got training in 6 months, so I got to start preparing myself now.
Yep, I got to memorize every page of that 3,270 page document so that if they ask me a question, I can go whoosh. And so how did you prep? I mean, since you had the easy in a different aircraft, so you knew the avionics, and you had the type rating in the aircraft that, without those avionics. So really for you, was there any studying involved at all other than a refresher?
No, most of it was refresher. However, it was going back, and I mean, I hate to say it this way on a public program, but I mean, you're studying for the check ride, and a lot of it's rote memorization. Well, here are your limitations. You need to know all the limitations. Well, let's make sure that we know all the limitations. What are the G limits of the airplane? Because we all care about that on a daily basis, right? What is the minimum controllable airspeed in the air? I don't know.
All the numbers the FAA wants you to be able to know, and so that you don't bust it.
And there was also the memory items. And so there was a little bit of that. I had been on a trip the week before, and so I spent a little bit of time going over a brief synopsis of the systems, again, as part of the oral. But then there's, you look at the things that they really want you to know and you prepare that way. And then a lot of it is the limitations and the memory items. And that's what I spent a majority of my time on. And fortunately, like we just said, everything else I kind of already was familiar with. The avionics are not a big deal. I've used them many times before. And that really is the big part of the type rating, the initial type rating. So,
yeah. Yeah. So, hey, good job. And was it nervous having the FAA sit in the jump seat in the simulator?
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, completely.
And how did you handle that? What would you find the best way to deal with it?
Slow down. It would be the exact same answer that I would give whether the FAA is there or not. I did not change a single thing because he was watching. But when you're in that check ride environment, slow down. Like, don't do anything fast. Just think your way through it. There are very, very few things that happen on an airplane. Really, a fire is about the only thing that I think you could argue that requires, did you really move relatively quickly? Everything out, even if you lose an engine, it falls off the airplane. The airplane, as long as you fly the airplane, it's still going to fly. And then go through your stuff and make it methodical. Don't guess. I think you're supposed to do this. Just get the checklist, especially in this airplane. It's all electronic. And have your, look, I got the airplane. I'll take the radios. You go ahead and just run the checklist and verify with me before you do anything. And go through it slowly and methodically because you only get yourself in trouble. I think I would argue that you're going to get yourself into the most trouble when you are rushing through stuff in any check ride environment. It's stressful. There's no way around that. So slow it down. Take your time. If you need to get vectors back around, say, look, I need more time. I need a box pattern. Give me vectors back around, and we'll call you back. And like I said, whether if the feds are there or watching or not, the same advice.
Yep.
Yeah. Well said.
It's good advice, man. Speaking from experience. It's awesome.
I've done a few of these now. I guess.
Yeah. So now you got your paper certificate.
I do.
Because what they do is they punch a hole in your old we can't call it airman certificate anymore. Dang it.
We can. What
do you call it now?
Changed it yet.
Pilot certificate? I don't. Gosh.
Actually, what does it? Does it say airman certificate? Do you think they're actually?
They're going to change that. We're going to talk about that later in the show.
I will not participate in that segment.
So your pilot certificate, they punch a hole through it because you've now added a new type. So under the comment section where they have all the type ratings or whatever it is, they're going to issue you a new one. So they gave you a temporary or paper certificate that they printed out right in the FBO or at the Sim Center. And they give it, and how long is this good for? Is it 90 days or 120 days?
120 days.
120 days. So since, I thought this was a great opportunity to talk about this, since you just went through this, 120 days. Now, usually the FAA takes about 30, maybe 45 days, and in the mail, you'll receive an envelope with your certificate in it, with your new type rating. If you go about 90 days, I'd even say 75 days, and you still haven't received it, go to the FAA website at faa.gov and follow the prompts and just take a look and see. Maybe you can send a quick note, hey, or, I'd wait till like 90 days before I send them anything. But you definitely don't want to wait until 110 days and then go, hey, I haven't got my thing in the mail yet, because now, guess what?
You'll have an expired certificate.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then if you get a free ramp check today, free ramp check, and all of a sudden they're like, well, you're flying with an expired certificate. How many flights have you flown with an expired certificate? Let's multiply that by the fine. Yes, I've heard of that happening. Now, the FAA website's great. I've had people lose their certificate or leave it at home. So they're like, oh, God, what am I going to do now? Well, do you have a computer and a printer? If you're at a hotel, I know they have a business center. Let's go downstairs. Let's print out a paper copy. Call in the airline case. You call the chief pilot, tell them what's going on. They've got it on file somewhere, and there are ways to get around it with a paper copy temporarily. You can also get a temporary certificate, official temporary certificate from the FAA that they will email to you. And that way, if you get ramp checked or you need a certificate, you have proof from the FAA that, yes, this person has lost their certificate and here's their temporary. Kind of like the paper one that you just got. So great ways around it. Don't panic if you haven't received it in the mail. Don't panic. Just send an email. Figure it out. They can always reissue you one. Maybe it got lost in the mail. But don't wait until the last second. 90 days.
There's also on that FAA website, there's, that they tell you when they've been processing what they've received. And so if you're more than a couple weeks past that date, it's probably, even if it's only been, 6 weeks. It's time to call whoever gave you your check ride or your local FSDO to try and start tracking it down.
Yeah. Always get the examiner's contact information, because I know they have yours, but sometimes people, they usually give you a business card. And you put that in your wallet until you get your license or whatever. Or always keep it. I always keep my contact information. You never know. You might have a question. You go, hey, can I ask you a question about something? Great to have it. I mean, that's what this industry is all about, right? Keeping contacts. But really happy to hear that you had a positive experience, even with the added pressure of having an examiner on board your sim. I think Rob's had that a couple times too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, FA in the jump seat of a sim ride or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you and I know when you were training for a line check airman job, at some point you have to do a line check with the FAA, the actual FAA on there.
Yep.
I think I get more stressed out or more anxiety just from the overall training process because I want to do well. But when it comes time for check ride time, I mean, I'm still amped up and still, anxiety ridden. But whether there's an FAA person there or not, it doesn't affect me as much. I don't get overly excited about because they're just people too. They're airmen, and a lot of them don't even know, don't even have a clue what's going on in the check ride that you're actually taking unless they're actually checked out on that particular airplane. So, but there are some that do, but they understand as long as you're gonna, if you answer the question correctly, or if you don't know the answer, you know where to get it. A lot of times it's it's not a threatening thing. The limitations are the exception. But I've done a few rides, and when I was training myself, I would take rides with FAA because I'm cheap and they were free.
Oh, there you go.
So in Phoenix, when I was getting like my instrument commercial ride, you know, my instructor would ask the FAA guy from the nearest physio to come out and give me my check ride,
Yeah.
and it
Keeps
was
them
free.
current too, right? The FAA has to do so many check rides
I'm
a
sure.
year to keep current for their instructional purposes too. Yeah, I had a wonderful time at Sandpiper towards the end of
Yeah.
my career there, where our POI came up to me and said, "Hey, you know, the FAA, we have so many people upgrading to captain, and when you upgrade to captain at a 121 carrier, you need a Fed ride, which is usually done." At the same time, you're getting your line check from your check airman as a captain. So you've done your IOE. Obviously, you're typed in the airplane. You went through all your ground school and your simulator type writing. And so you've done all that, but now you're on the line during initial operating experience, or IOE. It was the first, I think it was like 15 to 20 hours you had to do with a check airman minimum. So you did a couple trips. And then at the tail end of it, if the check airman thought you were ready, they would schedule a line check. And the line check, the FAA wanted to be in the jump seat to observe. Notice I didn't say to check. I said to observe.
Observe.
And so what happened was, at the time that I was, you know, in the heat of, you know, being a check airman there, you were a check airman there too around the same time. You weren't quite at legacy yet. And I had our POI come up to me and go, "Hey, we got so many people upgrading to captain. The FAA just doesn't have enough staffing or budget to sit in on all these line or Fed rides. Would you like to be an FAC?" And I was like, what's that? He goes, "Well, it's a FAA authorized check airman, and basically you're going to observe a check airman give a line check for the company, and you are basically going to do my job, which is observe. And then you're going to fill out this form and email it to me, and it's pass or fail, and or not pass or fail, but complete or incomplete, and basically sit in for us." And I was like, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And he's like, "Yeah, it's a great thing to have on your resume." I was like, "Well, you don't have to sell me on that. I like the opportunity. You considered me, so absolutely." So that's what I did for my last about year there. I sat on a lot of captain upgrades and only had one event that it was considered incomplete on my side of it. And the check airman ended up saying, "No, you need more time." And, you know, just because I'm looking for, does he have a head on his shoulder or her shoulders? And did they bust any regulations? And unfortunately, they busted some regulations, and they just didn't make it through that time. When they went back, and I don't know what happened to them, if they did some more training and came back on the line to try again, or they just went back to the right seat. Usually they would elect to go back to the right seat for 6 months and then try again, which is common at that point of the game. So yeah, having the FAA on board there, like you guys said, they're just sit there to make sure that they're checking the boxes that they're supposed to check. And why does the Fed ride have to happen on a captain upgrade? Well, always comes back to one of those written in blood scenarios. And all you got to do is look at the Colgan crash.
Yep.
And that's why the Fed decided every single captain upgrade will receive a Fed ride.